you take everything that you know and love from the C70 and everything or almost everything that you wanted to have from the C400 and maybe could not afford or could not justify. So the C80 is really a combination of two of those things. And I think it's working really very nice.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD Newsroom with Nino and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome to episode 29 of CineD Focus Check. Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Nino. How are you?
Good. It was a busy week in terms of product news. We are about to head out to IBC tomorrow. So when you're listening to this, actually, you're listening to this on Thursday, probably. We're recording on Wednesday. So IBC is starting tomorrow, Friday, with hopefully a lot of news. We will enter the IBC craziness, doing lots and lots of videos about new products, interviews about new products. But of course, as with every trade show, a lot of manufacturers try to already capture the attention of people before the show, so people actually can decide to go there and see the new products. And we had a major one this week, which is the Canon EOS C80 cinema camera from Canon. Now, we were in a lucky position to get a pre-production unit for review, and you dived right in and sacrificed your weekend and a lot more, and made a very nice mini documentary plus hands-on. Just give me your thoughts on this camera. It looks like a full-frame version of the C70.
That's true. So first of all, those are the moments I think that we both really appreciate when, and I think both of us are working even better under pressure. No, it's
yeah, I hate this. I mean, I hate that. Like my wife constantly tells me, "Why do you do everything last minute?" The truth is, I perform better.
That's right. We kind of enjoy the last minute thing, and we've Canon with this camera. That was a good example. We were in contact with Canon. We knew what is coming. Somehow, to our opinion, the EOS C80 is kind of a deal breaker in the sense of value for money for performance. Yeah, value of money for performance. And I will dive right into this in a second. So, of course, we decided to do the first-hand review and to do a mini documentary. And the process of a mini documentary, of course, you have to start from scratch. You literally have to look for a subject, for a candidate, to find somebody who is able to kind of carry the story on the shoulder and just be there to document. And we were in a lucky position to be in contact with a young Chinese lady who lives here in Vienna. Clarice, that's her name, the international name, yeah. Tuyo is her Chinese name. And she came here to Vienna with nothing, literally nothing with her husband, but nothing in terms of knowledge, nothing in terms of language. And you can imagine how it is to immigrate from one place to another. And she literally built herself from scratch. And that was the interesting part for me. And she's very emotional, practical, and she has the drive. And that's what I really liked in her. So I'm saying she performed remarkably. Not that it was a performance, but she is the absolute person that you want to follow. Yeah, she has this kind of fire built in her.
And she's not hiding. I mean, she's
outgoing. She's really outgoing.
No, I mean, emotionally, she's very much, she opened up like
she's
amazingly alive, in front of your camera.
Yeah, and again, I think that we are in a fortunate position to talk to people and kind of guide them through and try to bring the best out of them in this mini documentary. And of course, there is also the camera. Although I really have to say, I'll appreciate if one day people will stop talking and treating equipment per se, because it's always about the story. But that's part of the review. And the main strength of the Canon EOS C80 is, of course, the full frame, like the C400, and of course,
it's the same sensor, right, as the C400.
Yes, that's the information I got, and of course, the C400 can do more. but it costs much more. So, and we will dive right into the actual value for money in a second, but it also can do up to 6K 30p in RAW LT. And I think this is a big news. And the real big news for me is that Canon, we always had the feeling that Canon is somehow trying to, they're really nice and good company, but the prices were a bit disconnected from the new reality. Meaning there is a big competition. There are so many other companies who are also making good stuff, good cameras and so on. And somehow Canon was above,
especially in the cinema line. I mean, like I remember my first professional larger sensor cinema camera was the original C300 and I loved it. And everybody said it was too expensive at the time. It cost like $14,000 or euros. And it was expensive, but it was the only one in the market that could do what it did. And it became very popular. But then when Sony brought out the FS7,
that's right.
That I think was almost half price in the beginning. And of course, I was one of the many that completely switched to Sony at that time. And then once you're locked in and then you start investing into the lenses, you kind of like, and then, like you said, I mean, the success, because the successor to the C300 was just simply twice as expensive as the FS7. Yeah. And it took them a long time.
Exactly. So it took I think, over a year, almost 2 years that we didn't really hear anything from Canon. Like it was.
You mean now? Yeah.
Now, I'm talking now in present time, it was quiet. And then they came up with new mirrorless cameras, and then with the EOS C400. And the EOS C400, besides the features, one of the significant things was the price. It's almost 8,000, it's $1 less. So let's call it $8,000, which again, it was a big thing to see Canon finally coming down with prices.
And I mean, especially, the C400, if you think about it, is now really half price of what the C300 Mark III was, I think. And it's the successor of that, essentially, right? I mean, I don't think there will ever be a C300 Mark IV because the C400 looks like it's the same, kind of like very similar body.
Yeah, I don't want to speculate. I'm just saying that was the first camera that was kind of price for value was okay, but not for everybody. And now comes the EOS C80, and this is even lower in price. This is like $5,500. And for what the camera gives, it's almost like a younger sibling of the C400.
So where the difference is actually, what can it not do that the C400 can do?
Basically, in terms of connectivity, the C400 is a little bit better. And when it comes to frame rates in 6K, the C400 can go higher with the frame rate because the C80 is still limited. I'm talking about RAW now. In RAW recording, it can do up to 30p. And it also has the higher bit rate of RAW, But all in all, and guys, let's be completely transparent. And for most of the things that you do, unless it's high end, this I think it's more than 500 megabit per second RAW recording. What Canon calls LT, it's simply beautiful. I personally always liked Canon color science. I prefer always the warmer look over the cold one that other companies are pushing, because the cold one is more, the skin tones is a bit more news for me. And Canon was, for me personally, was always very nice in the colors that they produced, and it really shines here. So the EOS C80 with the 6K full frame up to 30p, plus you can they added also 12G SDI, which is a big thing for many people.
Want to say, that was really missing from the C70, and I think it was one thing where a lot of people had trouble with the C70.
That's right. And they also added two what they call professional codecs, and those are the XF HEVCS and the XF AVCS. Both are 10-bit, and the main differences between this and the normal ones, it carries all the naming metadata. You can you really have everything that you need when you start to edit like bigger projects. sometimes it's not enough to have like just a clip name. Yeah. So here you have a absolutely full name, like in every professional codec, and that's really helpful. They also added another 1/4 inch hole in the base of the camera, so now you can really attach and secure the a tripod plate. And other thing, like one of the obstacles with this camera in general, there is no EVF. There's only an LCD. But with the C70, when you went out to film, I felt like you're filming in almost blind. I mean, the LCD strength, the luminance was not strong enough. And now you can really push it up, and the LCD luminance is much brighter if you need it to be brighter. And that's a great help to shoot outside. Although I'm an old-fashioned shooter, I still would love to have an EVF.
Yeah, that's one of the things we talked about before, is that it seems like a younger generation doesn't even have the requirement for an EVF anymore. And we see this with the popularity of cameras such as the FX3 from Sony, which doesn't have a viewfinder, but other than that is essentially technically the same camera as an A7S III, which does have a viewfinder, and it still seems like the FX3 is more popular with video shooters.
It gives, of course, room for innovation, and I don't want to dive into now EVF and all of that. But I'm just saying, I wish that there was an EVF, but it isn't, and the main excuse, it's a cinema camera. Okay, fine. And then for the hot show, this is now an intelligent one. It doesn't mean that it went to university, but the connectivity is enhanced.
Smart hot shoe.
Exactly. And you can connect some audio accessories to it and without wiring, and that, of course, will communicate. What else? Let me see quickly. The hand grip is redesigned, and it's working. It's very comfortable. It's very nice. It's very, very good job they did here. Also, one of the things that people were really suffering, I don't know if you guys are a C70, EOS C70 user, when you close the LCD screen, there was a no lock mechanism. So it was kind of easy to open. Now there's a small lock mechanism, and they even took care of the, how do you call it, the jog, like the jog, the little...
it's not a wheel, it's like a joystick.
Joysticks, yeah. My brain. Early morning here. The joystick is redesigned, so it's easier with the thumb. And also they added Ethernet and wireless connectivity. And one of the big things with the C80 is it's really made for higher productions. When it's VFX and all those virtual studios, I didn't even touch this in my review because that was really beyond the scope of this review. But the camera is really built for... let's call it modern production.
Okay.
Yeah, so not only documentary. So all in all, I think Canon is doing a great job here, but also the price is right. And this is an absolute candidate, as far as I'm concerned, to our camera of the year when it comes to cinema camera of the year, because the value for money...
That's amazing. Also, if you think about it, you have the price-wise, it's now cheaper than... What do we have on the Sony side is still the FX6, which is now aging. I mean, they still haven't brought out a successor. Very popular camera, dual native ISO. This is a triple
one, and also, it's good that you're reminding me. There's a built-in ND filter like the C70, but I found out in my review, especially in the comments in YouTube, that some people were like, "Hey, why are you not mentioning this?" So here I'm mentioning. I thought that people are aware that the C70 already had the built-in ND filter. So for those who are not aware or familiar with the C70, this camera also has a built-in viewfinder.
But
ND filter.
But they're still fixed strengths, right? They don't have a variable ND.
It's not variable, but it's doing the job like what we're used to from other.
I'm just saying
a mechanical one, and it's working really good. And
yeah, and I mean, this really seems like the one-man band version of the C400 in a way, because the C400, of course, is built around also more multicam setups, I think, with also the connectivity to bigger lenses and having all those remote functionalities. Just also the body simply is like, like if you make a multicam shoot, for example, on a production, it's much easier with all the connectivity of multiple STIs to do with a C400. But this is perfect for... I mean, it's very small, and it's only little bigger than a mirrorless camera actually, I mean, it is bigger, but it's like a mirrorless camera with an attached, like battery grip almost.
I would say you take everything that you know and love from the C70 and everything or almost everything that you wanted to have from the C400 and maybe could not afford or could not justify. So the C80 is really a combination of two of those things. And I think it's working really very nice, very perfect. If you are a small production house and you're doing a variety of stuff, and we even didn't mention the autofocus here, which is very solid with Canon. So if you're doing, I mean, for news, I think it's overkill, honestly. But if you're doing creative stuff and you are an active working production house, I
think it's a versatile camera. I mean, you can use it for news for sure.
No, for sure. I'm just saying, I'm not so sure how much money you want to spend on a camera to shoot news. But in general, I'm just saying this.
Which I mean, 5 years ago, this was a budget thing, even for a news thing, right? I mean, like if you think about it, it's crazy how much. I mean, we've talked about this before.
We said we will never invest more than 10,000.
Exactly. It's it doesn't make any sense to. It's incredible how prices have come down. I mean, one of the biggest challenges that Canon still has, I think, is that the user base of people who already have RF lenses is still relatively low in the video field. That's my feeling. So that's one of the tricky parts. They have amazing lenses, and I think the lens you worked with, which is
the 24-105 f2.8, a bit heavy.
It's heavy, it's great, but that's the thing, right? Those RF lenses are very, very good optically, but we still suffer from the fact that there are almost no third-party RF lenses in the market.
There are, but not full frame. They are kind of allowing super.
But it kind of makes it more difficult for people, whereas on other mounts, especially E-mount, of course, you have a lot of options from Sigma and others that also make amazing lenses. And they simply bring down the price, and the lens selection is bigger. So that's probably the biggest challenge that Canon has. And also investing in a new camera system also means investing in a new ecosystem of lenses. But of course, a lot of people have a lot of EF lenses, and there are RF EF adapters. There's a new one actually, I think.
But there's also RF to PL adapter.
PL too, but you can operate those lenses. Of course, you will have not all the functions. You will have less great autofocus, I guess, and all those things. But still, it's possible. And the user base of EF lenses is huge. I mean, it's still
but
very
still,
big.
This is an open appeal to Canon. Please allow third-party manufacturers. If you want to make your cameras more popular and more on demand.
Well, we know. I think it's a tough call for any manufacturer because we know that margins on lenses are much higher than on cameras. I think most of these camera manufacturers probably make very little money on the cameras.
So I mean, that's the printer.
That's the printer, exactly.
And the ink is the lenses.
Exactly, that's what it is. That's the printer, and they sell you the ink, which is the lenses. But still, I mean, the lenses are great. Don't get me wrong; they are amazing. But yeah, they are heavy and they're big. They tend to be big. But optically perfect. Yeah.
And when you do 24-105. f2.8, it has to be there.
Even if you look at the primes, I mean, any of their primes are heavy and big, but they are very good optically. So it's not like you suffer from a bad quality, but you kind of don't have budget options in the RF field yet, and that's really what's missing. And even if I understand, I mean, Canon can probably, if they are fearing if they open up the RF mount full frame for other manufacturers, of course Sigma and others will roll in and just offer something for less money, which might affect their sales. But overall, I think it would just help the ecosystem to sell more.
Of course.
So, yeah, it's definitely something they should consider.
Absolutely. Yeah, Great. And of course, just to summarize, you can, of course, film 4K with this camera with the different variety and high frame rates up to, I think, 120 and so on. I'm not mentioning it here because the kind of big thing here is the 6K RAW with this camera.
Can you do
full frame.
Can you do 4K RAW without cropping?
There is no 4K RAW. RAW is limited to 6K.
It's a full frame.
It's a full frame. It's 6K.
I mean the full sensor.
Yeah, and you have of course C-Log 2 and 3 and other picture profiles, but that's in general.
What's the highest frame rate you can shoot?
In 6K, up to 30p.
And in 4K?
I think it's 120, and if you go to 2K, I think it's 180 if I'm not mistaken.
And that's that's cropping, and it's only with the
It's a slight
with
crop.
the codec.
Yeah, exactly. It's a different codec. But again, in all honesty, when I did the review, I kind of skipped.
Slow motion.
Exactly. It didn't fit the story at all here. And I also felt that I really want to kind of go for the full potential of the camera and also see how it works for me. And I think the only obstacle that I had was actually with Adobe Premiere Pro. This, sometimes I'm losing hair working with this.
I keep telling you, use DaVinci.
With this software, yeah, it's really maybe time to move on. And it's like, yeah, anyway, but that's really a different article and a different topic. But it was not easy. Like you record 4 channels of audio, you do proxies, whatever, and then you want to swap and it goes like, hey, your proxies are only 2 channels, not 4 channels, then what? But it will eventually let you do this in a different way, but it's all time consuming. And if you do S-Log3 recording, it will still read S-Log2. Okay, it can change and you need to save a certain preset for all the clips. It doesn't really work and yeah, but anyway.
Just one interesting thing to point out, I think, is that Canon has, I see in their naming conventions, it's interesting to look at that, how they are because basically this is a successor kind of to the C70, but it's also not, because it's not Super 35.
Yeah.
So, we don't know if there ever going to be a new C70 on Super 35. But there's
no justification.
No. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, yeah, probably not. But they're replacing the C70 with a C80. They're not calling it C70 Mark II. They have never called a full frame version of a Super 35 camera a Mark II. I just wanted to point that out because, for example, the C300 always has stayed Super 35. Also, up to the Mark III, which is the current one, and the C500. And the Mark II are the full frame versions of the C300, and but interestingly, the C400, which is much cheaper than the C500, is also full frame, right? So it's basically kind of like filling a gap, I think, budget wise. You know what I mean? It's like there was this big jump in a way between, I mean, both the C300 Mark III and the C500 Mark II are more expensive, but then they really introduced with the C400 a kind of like less expensive full frame camera, but it still basically does everything and more than those cameras because it's much newer. And on the C70, it's the same thing. It's like that's the full frame version. That's why it gets a completely new name. Yeah, but you can see them struggling in a way with the naming because you will still remember the C100, like long time ago. And then the C200, which is also a Super 35 camera. So it's, like they're running out of the numbers, I guess, at some point. But my guess is they will not have new versions of the Super 35 cameras, probably.
In the cinema line.
In the cinema line.
I can't predict here. I don't know. The only thing is I don't know if it's profitable and if it makes sense. I don't know.
I mean, we can see
that the C70 got a $1,000 price drop right now. So obviously they're trying to.
We don't know if it's actually discontinued, do we?
No, it's not discontinued.
Okay.
It's not. It will continue for now to be sold parallel to the new camera. Especially again, it's even cheaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I don't know. I don't see them introducing a new Super 35 successor of the C70, but that's only
or any of the others, to be honest.
My assumption. It's not that we have any sort of
and I also don't see them introduce a C300 Mark IV. It's like with Super 35. It's because that's what the C400 is, and you can always use the crop mode to have Super 35, and still. I mean, unless somebody would need an 8K or 6K Super 35 mode, but I don't see this. So you usually crop down to 4K and that's fine. So yeah, anyway.
Okay.
Just wanted to point that out. Cool. So if you haven't seen Johnny's review, head over. We'll put the link in the show notes. Very, very nice review. And
thank you.
Please give it a little bit more love. We'll be back after this message from our sponsor.
Welcome to 1 Minute Tips by Fujifilm and CineD. You might have heard of ACES while color grading, but what exactly is it? The Academy Color Encoding System was created to provide a universal color management framework for the entire film industry. Color management is a way to transform what the camera records into a common calibrated output for manipulating color data in repeatable steps, regardless of log curve or camera type. An analogy I like to use is if you were in a room with all different language speakers, all the languages in that room would need to get translated into a new common tongue in order for everyone to work together. It differs from LUTs because it typically offers one file per camera to transform it into the ACES color space. It is therefore not a final creative look and is also non-destructive, meaning that you retain all your color depth info after it's applied. If you're working in big projects and teams, it's generally a good color space to learn. However, if you're a one-person team, adopting something like the Resolve color management framework might be more your speed. Look for that in our next episode. This has been 1 Minute Tips. Until next time.
And now back to the show. And let's move on to something else. A couple of months ago, actually, I think it was just before NAB, we had a visit. Was it before? No, it was after. Right after NAB.
But time is becoming such a mishmash in our heads. It's like...
So we had a nice visit from, his name is Valentin Farkas. He's the creator behind the YouTube channel Orbit for Creators. You can check it out. He's a nice guy, and he's doing videos on all kinds of YouTube channels. So he's kind of looking behind the scenes of YouTube channels, and he's originally from Vienna here, but he lived in the US for a long time, and he made it his life mission kind of to portray YouTube channels, and he asked us if he can do that, and I gave him a little bit of a tour of our CineD headquarters here. So if you're interested, there's a nice video of looking behind the scenes of our CineD headquarters, including the podcast studio, our other studios, and it's just looking at everything and all the gear that we have here, but also a long interview where he asked me about the history of CineD and where we came from, and how we ended up doing what we're doing. So if you're interested in that, just head over to our website. We are putting the link in the show notes. We actually made the interview here in the podcast studio, but it's not a podcast episode, of course.
It was just easier.
It was just easy. Yeah, he was like, can we do it here? Yes. So if you want to look behind the scenes, want to look at the cameras that we started with, and look at how many batteries we have in our drawers and how many lenses, just head over to the website and check it out. Yeah, good. And definitely.
It's always nice to talk about history and know that thanks to our audience, we are fortunate to be where we are now. This is really...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a different kind of content that we personally don't make, so it's nice to see that.
No? We're very shy.
Let's move on to some other major news pieces of the week. So Apple introduced the iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max. And in terms of smartphone innovation, I would say on the Apple lineup, well, last year we had this kind of big jump where they introduced Apple Log in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max.
External recording
we actually had before, but now it's log recording externally in ProRes, and it's of course USB-C. So that was new last year. So this year it feels like, there are innovations and there are just some significant ones, but it doesn't feel as big as last year. And but there's a couple of cool things that they added. So basically, you see that, like we talk about most of the time, the main reason for people to upgrade smartphones in general is the camera, because the processing arguably, it's not like 5-6 years ago where you still could feel a difference in performance. It's like if you have last year's phone, it's good enough for 99% of the things you're doing, even from 2 years ago. But if you actually see the difference with the photos. You see that they are getting better, and it's like with professional cameras. Every camera is a good camera now. It's like every smartphone is a great smartphone now, and it's becoming harder for them to, find enough reasons to upgrade your phone. Now, the big thing this year is, and that's not camera related, of course, is this Apple Intelligence, the AI functions that Apple will put into their phones. I'm saying will put in because by launch of the iPhone 16 Pro, none of the Apple intelligence will actually be in it. They will add it later on.
But that will be also added to the 15.
Only
Pro
to
and
the
so-
15 Pro
Yeah.
and Pro Max, not to the others because of the processing that it needs. Not to the normal 15. But it's also not going to be available in the European Union. So we will actually not be able to use it for a long time because of those
regulations.
regulations. So it's a bit annoying that we probably can't even try it out for a long time. So difficult. I mean, there's, politics behind that and, data protection stuff. But hopefully they will solve this soon. It will also not be available in a lot of other languages for a long time. So, for example, German will only be introduced in 26, I think, which is strange for, a very large language in a way. But yeah, so it's going to be English and it's going to be everywhere except the EU, I guess.
Maybe they still have to train the AI model to translate to German.
Not really. I think it's all I think it's just, there's a lot of things that they kind of need to make sure people don't misuse it. You know what I mean? I'm sure there's thousands of developers now working on things that are preventing, because Apple always tries to play the safe game. So they don't want to, people to misuse stuff. But we're not talking about this stuff in the phone. We're of course talking about the hardware and the cameras. And in terms of performance, what it can do now, it can now shoot 4K 120 frames per second. So, and that is down to, we don't know if it's a new camera sensor. My guess is it might be the same sensor as last year. We still have to test it. I hope we get access to them very soon. We did a lab test on the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max last year. Once we get access to the 16 Pro and Pro Max, we will repeat that and just see if there's going to be differences. My guess is that it's simply the A18 processor, which is an upgrade to last year's processor, is faster, which allows for faster sensor readout. They're saying it's reading out twice as fast, which of course allows for higher frame rates. And now we can do 4K 120 instead of 4K 60 like last year. But they have enhanced the way stuff is also how you can actually modify video in post.
Sorry, they did or they did not?
They did. So, for example, there is a somehow this video. Oh yeah, it's playing. So, for example, you can now change. I mean, if you shoot something in 120 frames per second, you can simply use the Photos app to change from actually playing back 120 frames per second, or change it to 24 frames per second, 30, 60, and it's just gonna adjust like in an editing, so you don't need to go through any editing program. There is a new way of a new feature in audio. So Apple claims there are 4, they call it studio quality microphones built into the phone, and there's something really interesting which allows you, like let's say you're filming a scene just with a phone. And I mean, they have this demo here where they filmed these 2 guys at a bar sitting there and talking to each other. Not using any professional microphones, no lavs, no nothing. So just the built-in phones built-in microphones in the phone. And there's a lot of background noise. And I guess it's also kind of AI machine learning stuff, but it can filter out the background noise, and there's a feature called, I think it's Studio Sound, and then it can isolate the sound of those 2 people talking, and it will completely eliminate everything in the background. It remains to be seen how well this works. Of course, it will work differently in different situations, but interesting. I mean, this is something that is kind of building on features like voice isolation that we see also in DaVinci and Premiere and also Final Cut, or this Adobe podcast speech enhancer that's kind of rebuilding voice. This is really, really interesting. You can even, they call it a cinema mix. So then it will put, for example, the 2 people or whatever, whoever is kind of like talking in the middle, and you will, sound-wise, in the center, and you will have the background noise distributed automatically to the back. So it's almost doing like it's not a Dolby mix, but they call it cinema mix. interesting. Yeah, it will be interesting how and this is just with the built-in microphones.
Yeah, that's interesting because we also see a lot of products, modern microphones that they have the noise reduction built in, and it's always the same issue that those microphones they cannot take a sound stamp of the noise, and they're always built on the same noise reduction, and then you will end up, sorry to say, but as if you are talking in the toilet, because it's reduced maybe too much. So I really wonder if the Apple thing simply take a certain sound stamp from the surrounding, and based on that, it knows what to isolate, and then the result will be nice.
I think it's probably having 4 microphones on each side, one basically allows it to know where a sound is coming from.
But that's not enough. You need to analyze the background noise. That's the thing. And that's where doesn't matter if it's DJI, Comica, Holyland, and so many other good companies kind of lagging behind a little bit, because it's all the processing, the DSP will always work on a kind of implemented or something that, you told the chip, this is the noise stamp.
Yeah.
Use it to reduce.
And
of
sometimes
course,
it's too much.
Exactly. So it needs to learn our surrounding first, take a certain sound stamp, and then according to that, isolate. And I can only guess that that's what Apple is doing if the noise reduction is working well.
Also, if you think about, for anybody who's used this Adobe speech enhancer, I think it's called, it's called, you can go to podcast.adobe.com, and then there's a function called enhance speech. You can upload WAV files, and I think with the Pro version, you can also, even the movie files. It's a bit like workflow-wise, it's a bit strange because you have to go through the web. It's not built into Premiere. For example, the voice isolation that's built into Premiere is not very good compared to DaVinci, but this one is good. And the way this works, the Adobe Podcast Speech Enhance, it's analyzing the audio, and it's not. You can literally you record yourself on the phone on the street with all the background noise, and it will spit out a studio quality version of that. And the way it does it is it's not actually reducing noise in the background. It's analyzing your speech pattern. It's rebuilding it. It's transcribing what you said, and then it's reading it out in your own voice again. And the crazy thing about this is, of course, that it's not perfect. So sometimes it eliminates. Not. Well, you can decide the level, like the percentage level you want to apply to that. But the way, if you do 100%, and sometimes it eliminates accents. And it's sometimes it's getting better, but now like sometimes eliminating accents, and it's even swapping words. There's some examples on the internet. Is like there was a guy I saw that said the word Microsoft, and it replaced it with microphone because he muffled it a little bit, and that's scary. So you kind of need to check what it does. But if it when it works really well. And I wonder when will be the time when manufacturers will build this kind of functionality into the microphones directly, or because that's going to be interesting. It's only going to be better. It's a machine learning thing as well.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure that you have the powering process to, like the process powering that you need in order to do this in real time.
Well, Apple is doing a lot of AI functions in general on device that don't require any internet connection. Yeah. So it's a matter of time, of course, but this will come. I can see this already, and that means we will have lav mics or these little recorders, and you can be literally anywhere and just, and be sure that it's going to be.
I will talk about a small anecdote between us in a second, but I tried this Adobe stuff. I was not so impressed. Maybe, it was a while back. It completely changed my amazing, sexy voice into something that didn't sound like me anymore. Yeah. So
it changes it sometimes.
Yeah. So that was like, maybe if others.
It's the first step. They call it beta. I don't know if it's still out of beta.
I kind of stopped following, because what I use mostly, and people also commented about the quality of sound in the mini documentary. I really now pass everything through. I use the DJI Mic 2, which I really like. It has a very 32-bit float, very nice. And then I run it through DaVinci Resolve with the voice isolation,
which does a similar thing, I guess.
50% kind of. So
Yeah.
it's really cleaned the background, and then you lift up a little bit in the.
But this is also machine learning based. It's probably not rebuilding your voice, but
but it did a good job. And the anecdote between us, because I really in my mind moved on, and I'm working a lot with those microphones on me right now. You know what I mean? And you, I mean, yeah, I know. But
you mean the ones which have the big DJI or Rode logo right in front of you?
Gaffer is my best friend.
Yeah, I just don't like how heavy they are and how they can pull down. So I just
there
plug
are different
in
ways
a
to
lav
manipulate that, and now they're helping
We
us.
have a microphone guy, Felix, sitting here behind the scenes. He's sweating and shaking his head as you say that.
Yeah, well, he can sweat and shake, but the reality is different. And when you're working fast, and you know that you can literally.
Johnny, I told you before, you're becoming a creator. Your favorite camera is now the Osmo Pocket 3. Your favorite microphones are the ones you stick straight to your shirt. So
that's fine.
That's how you make a creator out of a filmmaker.
Exactly. I'm a happy creator then.
No, fair enough. I mean, everything is advancing, and I think it's it's becoming very hard to hear the difference.
All those enhancements eventually are helping me to deal more with the framing.
Yeah.
Because when you run as a one-man band, and you also have to worry about, take care of the light, take care of the sound, and so on. If you can isolate those elements, and there's a little fly makes me crazy. You can isolate those elements, and let's, for example, 32-bit float. This is such a blessing.
Yeah.
I know that the audio is already recorded on the device itself. So if something really goes wrong, I have a hard copy backup. Unless
when you're not listening, the only thing, it's like rustling noises and stuff like that. It will not help you if it's 32 bit.
I didn't have any issues with this. I'm just saying that I also set up when you take the microphone out of the case, it will start recording automatically. So I don't even have to remember to turn it on, because I have sound, you can listen to the sound, but then you find out it was not recorded internally on the microphone itself. So I'm just saying all those little things helping me at the end to really concentrate in the storytelling itself, talking to the person and framing. But that's about iPhone.
Let's go back to a few things on the iPhone. So one important thing about the camera system on the 15 Pro and Pro Max, there was a difference in the telephoto camera. So it was the equivalent, full frame equivalent of 13 millimeter, 24, and I think 70 or something, 75 on the Pro, and now it was 120. That's a 5x magnification compared to the normal one on the Pro Max. Now both the iPhone 16 Pro and the Pro Max have the same camera system. It doesn't make a difference more which one you choose. You will have the same cameras on both, which is
reducing cost.
People will. It's probably reducing cost, but it's also going to be better for people. Yeah. I mean, the reality. I use the 15 Pro Max, and it has 13, 24, and 120 millimeter equivalent. While it's nice to have the long telephoto, in practice, I very often am lacking something in between, because if you're really shooting video and also photos, I mean, you wouldn't just use a super wide, a wide, and a long telephoto. For me, it's definitely missing something like a 50 or 60 in the middle as a normal portrait lens. You can, of course, fake it with a 2x, but it's not using the full sensor, and it's sacrificing quality, of course. So I wish that they would move into either adding a fourth one, or even, in my opinion, I would be. I mean, you said you're missing the telephoto because you used the normal Pro, but I'm missing more the lens that you don't want. Like the 70, I think in practice is more useful, and even especially considering that those phones crop in if you shoot video, so it's even longer. I don't know, it's probably 140 millimeters or something. So it is, it's strange in a way for me that they don't have a 50 mil or even 35 or something in the middle there. I guess this would be something in the future.
Maybe it's also a matter of marketing. You never know, because the higher numbers.
Yeah, of course, it's very useful. I mean, it is very useful to have a long telephoto lens in the phone, because it's simply amazing to take amazing stills of your kid on the playground while you're sitting very far away.
Sitting at home.
Where you're sitting at home. That's creepy.
Take the video.
That's very creepy.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. So, it's just my 2 cents here. I guess in the future we'll probably see 4 cameras on a phone, and then they can add this. But I definitely don't need an even longer lens on there. So that's just my 2 cents. In terms of camera, you can see how important the whole camera thing is for them, because one of the major additions, and this is not only for the Pro line, it's also for the normal iPhone 16, which only has 2 cameras, that has the wide, the 13 and the 24 millimeter. By the way, the 13 is now 48 megapixels, so it's much higher resolution. And now we have a camera control button on all of those phones, both the normal ones and the Pro version. And it's not just a normal shutter button. So it's in addition, on the Pros, it's in addition to this action button that they added last year, which you can assign. I have ChatGPT on this, so when I press this, ChatGPT comes up, because that's actually useful as opposed to the old Siri. But you can already assign the camera onto this. But now you will have an additional button. So funny enough, they are adding buttons back on again after getting rid of buttons a couple of generations back. And this button is kind of a smart button. Like if you press it once, I think it opens the camera. If you press it again, it takes a photo. If you press it longer, it switches on the video, so you can record video. And it also has some kind of like touch sensitivity. So if you kind of roll to the side, you can swap between different modes and change things like shutter speed. I think we have a little video here. So if you look at this, like it's the zoom, it's the it says f-stop. It's not really f-stop. It's just the depth, like this fake depth that you, with cinematic mode that you get. And
but at
all
the
those things.
end of the day, every company needs to ask itself, would my existing customer change and upgrade to the newer version? For me, after listening to you and of course following before what they did, the answer is no. I don't think that I have so much joy and so much of what I need right now with the iPhone 15 Pro. I don't see any. It looks like a mid jump and not like a full jump. I don't know how you feel about this, but I don't know. I find it hard to understand their strategy here. Like,
well, if we're on a 15 Pro or Pro Max, of course, I mean, especially considering the fact that all the AI, Apple Intelligence stuff, which is very useful, will also come to those phones. The upgrade is much harder to justify. I think it's definitely something. I mean, I'm usually somebody who's upgrading every second year, and because, like you said, it's probably it's not worth doing that. However, of course, I mean, it seems like a more of an incremental update, but you can see that the camera in general is the main thing for them to upgrade. And of course, I mean, they showed a music video for The Weeknd, this big artist, completely on iPhone 16 Pro, and demonstrated how well it behaves with slow motion and colors. And I have to say, it looks amazing. But of course, all of this has to be taken with a grain of salt, because, I mean, this is a big budget production. Even though an iPhone was used for shooting it, they could have shot this on an Alexa or whatever they wanted to.
Give us the money. We can do everything with the Osmo Pocket 3 too.
No, don't do that. But yeah, so basically, yeah, it looks really nice, and considering the fact that everything comes from the phone, it is impressive, I have to say. And of course, I mean, I'm sure they recorded externally ProRes in log, and actually there's a little behind the scenes which we've also embedded in the article, where you can see. Well, that was the behind the scenes. That's the actual. I think the music video is not out yet, but there are some shots that they released from the music video which look very impressive. And yeah,
no doubt.
It's
really, when you see it like this, you can't distinguish anymore between this, especially maybe on a bigger screen, but when you look on a normal screen.
But the one thing where you definitely can always see the difference for me is just simply this missing middle focal length. It's always 24.
You mean here too?
Or one, yeah, it's like you see this is a 24 millimeter. Like if that's the one thing. If there was a 50, that'd be much harder to distinguish, because you kind of I've gotten used to this 24 millimeter because always the best camera is this main camera. We also, like in the lab test, we saw this is the main thing that they focus on. And you just see the focal length is just, it's just, then this is the one thing that kind of gives it away that it's a phone. But anyway, so this is the iPhone 16 Pro. I think it's available for order soonish or already, and it's starting shipping very soon, one week or so. So yeah, moving on. Actually, we mentioned DJI a little bit for the Pocket again and so on, but there was a little bit of a piece of news that wasn't actually picked up by that many outlets, but we wanted to report about it. The U.S. House of Representatives, the legislative body, one of the two houses in the U.S., voted to bar new DJI drones from the U.S. market. Now,
that's before the Neo or after the Neo when you say new?
Right now, this is just, if it's in the house, it was really decided by the House of Representatives. It will still have to pass the Senate, and then it will have to be signed into law by the president. So it still has a long way to go. And of course, the Senate can deny it and send it back to the House. But the direction is clear. And in general, the US, they called it even China Week. There's a lot of different bills that are trying to limit Chinese influence in the US. And this is just one bill of many that they want to pass this week.
This will make so many users so much unhappy.
But the strange thing is that if this becomes law, it only affects new generations of DJI drones, which is strange in a way, because if they were serious about their concern that whatever data would be shared with the Chinese government, I think it should probably affect all of the drones, because simply why?
No, but you have to be realistic also. What you're going to do? You're going to start to collect drones from people.
Yeah.
You're going to start giving huge fines for people who are flying.
Yeah.
I think, again, I don't want to dive into the political side of this, because we can't do anything. I think in general, many users will be really unhappy, and if that will happen, that will be a huge big news in general. But
there's this gap, there's not even, sorry.
Yeah. There will also, probably the thinking behind is that with AI, also drones technology will advance. Yeah. So from a certain point onward, drones that people already have will become kind of obsolete. You know what I mean? The performance will be less, resolution also will lag, because part of this thing is, of course, resolution. Yeah. But let's see. That doesn't look so good. I really wonder if.
But I wonder what happened if that really became law. Just think about it. DJI is so dominant in this space. They own 70% of the drone market. There's hardly any other relevant player worth mentioning anymore. And it also means that it would immediately open up the field for US manufacturers or any Western manufacturer, but those would be mainly US manufacturers, to kind of waltz into that space and really innovate, which will be a long thing to catch up to in terms of what DJI drones are capable of.
It will be a loss for the industry in general.
Of course, but US drone manufacturers like Skydio have stopped making consumer drones because they simply cannot compete with DJI. And of course, that would probably make them reconsider that. And we've also all the companies like FreeFly, but they're really in the high-end game. And I wonder what would happen, but it would definitely hurt production. In general, I also wonder what would happen with servicing those old drones, because what if those drones could be upgradable, or something like an Inspire, where you can actually change the camera module. The drone is kind of would they probably bring out a new camera model and at least upgrade that? I don't know. It's a lot of things, a lot of question marks here. It's a long time away still from being signed into law. Also considering that US presidential elections are around the corner, that would also delay any kind of signing into law of that. But the direction, like you said, is clear. Let's just see where this goes. Yeah, probably, I don't think that DJI would agree to, kind of be forced into data processing inside the US, because we've seen this with the GDPR laws in Europe, where, for example, cloud storage providers have to, I think there's some kind of law that the kind of cloud storage for European customers has to be inside the EU. I wonder, like if that could be a compromise that they can offer, that all the processing kind of happens in the US and is monitored some way or another. But it's, it's almost impossible to do that kind of stuff.
I mean, they have other channels of income, of course, DJI. They do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But in terms of dominance, this is, unless somebody really want to kill the dominance here, I don't know.
But you can see them already diversifying. I mean, they actually released an electric bike, which was almost like we didn't report about it because it's not relevant for our audience. But you can see that they are already applying. They're trying to diversify because they probably see this looming.
No, but that's also very much in the Chinese culture, because when I visited in my mini documentary, when I visited Clarice, she was cooking rice with Huawei rice cooker.
Yeah. I thought you were saying Huawei phones.
Huawei. Yeah. So all of those companies, we are not really aware of it 100% because it's not that we are dealing with other products.
Yeah.
But it's very much in the culture, in the corporate culture.
Diversify.
To diverse. I mean, you can see this sometimes in Japan too, because of course you have, Panasonic bikes and so on. But
there's Panasonic bikes, really?
Of course, because Panasonic in general is a very big battery manufacturer.
No, it doesn't come with
camera
mounts?
No.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I knew about the medical stuff though.
No, there is medical. There's a whole white appliances. There's a whole everything. Yeah, that's really
okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see where this goes. We'll keep an eye on it. So it's just something to be aware of.
Exactly.
And just you can be sure if you are in the US and if you are using a DJI drone right now, they will not pry this drone from your hands, even if this passes into law, because this will only affect future generations of those drones. And I guess anything that was announced now or is being announced very soon will not be affected because it's not law yet. So I guess you can still buy the Neo if you want to. Okay, let's move on to the final piece of news that we're going to talk about today. The iOdyne Pro Mini was announced, a smart drive for video and photo professionals. Now, you did this interview a while back.
In April already.
What is it?
Where to start? First of all, iOdyne is there are very nice people behind this company, and they're making smart professional solutions for our industry. We reviewed in the past the iOdyne Pro, which it looks like Apple's MacBook 16-inch, and that allows.
But it's an SSD essentially.
Yeah, but it's kind of a bigger device, and that it works quite well. If you work in a large environment and if you need to connect few people and so on. But when I tested this, what was it, I think 2 years ago, one of the things that I thought of, like, imagine if you have something like that to carry with you. And I guess that's the type of feedback that iOdyne got from many other users, and they finally delivering. I mean, it's really nice that they sat down and worked on a mini version of their iOdyne Pro, and it's a smart drive. That's how they would like to call it, because I think one of the biggest things when you're introducing something like this to the market, how do you actually show the people the difference between this one and an SSD, for example, which is a bit cheaper, of course, yeah? So that meant to be a true professional working piece of equipment. You can encrypt stuff. You can, of course, it's very fast and it will sustain the data rate. So it has Find My in it, and it has a very nice.
You mean the Apple Find My feature?
That's right, and it has a very nice screen, which is literally kind of like you can find in some of those books, like a ebook. It's not LCD or OLED, because that can be customized. Like you can really write stuff. You can even make some dedicated versions with CineD logo on them and so on. Yeah, it's very well thought through to serve production companies or production people or people who are working in the field. The actual case of this is really beautiful to look at. It will come in a diversity of colors and so on.
I mean, the encryption is great. I think we've seen something like this from SanDisk, where they also have an encryptable drive. But this, it's definitely something that's kind of neglected in the industry.
That's right. So this is really a drive that meant, or a smart drive that meant to live in the field and sustain the impact when you run around, when you edit outdoor and so on. And I'm really looking forward to actually review this.
Can they send us some for tomorrow when we head to IBC?
I'm not so sure for tomorrow because they pushed a little bit from the last quarter of 2024 to 2025 the production itself. But one thing that they really had to work on is how to combat overheating. I think many of us are not really aware that all of those devices, we know this of course from cameras, but all of those devices are, when they're working, they're
generating heat.
A lot of heat, And here, they worked with another American company, a new company actually, which invented a new way of cooling.
Okay.
And it's amazing what this third-party company actually invented. And I know, or we know, that they are talking to some other manufacturers in the industry in general, without going into details, because you can imagine how overheating can be tackled in a different way.
For cameras.
Also for cameras, and then I don't know if they're in contact with camera manufacturers, but I'm just saying if you will be able to implement such cooling system in a camera, for example, you can forget about the fan. You don't need it, and then it means less power consumption and less space and less moving parts.
A smaller C80 that doesn't even need the fan anymore.
That's right. So if you're a camera manufacturer and you need a connection to this company, just contact us. We'll be happy to help you. But iiodyne is the first company, as far as I know, who is using this type of solution from that company commercially. They're very proud in this, and this airjet thing from For Systems is, at least according to what I saw, is working quite well. Of course, I'll be happy to test it in the field and see if it's really not overheating. It's nice.
Cool. I think we'll wrap it up here. Simply
just 1 second, because I know people will ask about the pricing. So just we know it's coming in 2 versions: 4K, 4 TB, 4 terabyte, and 8 terabyte. And the 4 terabyte will be 1,495, and the 8 terabyte 2,195.
So not exactly budget drives, but
it's not budget. But again, it's a production tool, and you have to think about all the extras that it gives. And those pricing, of course, are for the pre-order. If you pre-ordering now, and I guess it might change depending on the geographical place and, of course, currency, taxes, and so on.
Okay, very cool. We're actually not gonna mention a lot of other news that also came out this week because we are, for example, the aperture light and so on. We're going to do interviews about those at IBC, so we'll talk about it in the next episode. You will see us again. Well, hopefully you're going to watch our IBC coverage. That's, just follow CineD. We generally produce a lot of videos during those 4 days of the show. We will not output. It's not our intention to release all the videos during those 4 days because it's completely overwhelming.
20 videos in 1 day.
Yeah, so we try to spread them out over 2 weeks or so after the show also, because I think then they actually get more attention they deserve.
It's beneficial to everybody.
Beneficial to everybody.
Because also, how much can we get? It's like.
So next week, when you see us again, we'll be back here. Just came back from IBC. We'll talk about our impressions, the main things we saw there, and the things we've released by that point. And just follow our coverage. There's going to be a lot of new stuff coming, of course, as usual. And see you next week.
Guys, thank you very much for watching.
Thanks for
watching. Talk soon.
Bye. And don't forget to subscribe to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Give us a rating. Give us a thumbs up. Follow us on YouTube. Everything.
Thank you.